Good evening, everyone. I'm Ayman Mohyeldin in for Chris Hayes from New York Tonight. The FBI says it has 0 leads in the manhunt for Francisco Oropeza, the suspect in this weekend's tragic shooting in Cleveland, Texas. Late Friday night, according to police, Oropeza's neighbor, a man named Wilson Garcia, approached Oropeza to ask him to stop firing his gun so close to Garcia's home. Oropeza refused, but it didn't end there. He then retrieved an AR-15 rifle, went to Garcia's home, and murdered 5 people, including Garcia's wife and 9-year-old son. It is a senseless tragedy and part of a larger pattern of interpersonal disputes turning deadly when guns are involved in this country. It is hard to imagine that horrible situation being any worse, but Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott's response somehow did, in fact, make things even worse. After reports of the shooting had already circulated Saturday, Abbott tweeted this out, a picture of his dog with the caption, "All smiles for the weekend." Now, look, the governor might argue that that tweet was pre-scheduled or he didn't know about the shooting when it was posted, but that in of itself raises the question, was the governor unaware of a horrible mass shooting in his own state? The alternative is somehow even worse, that Greg Abbott did know about the shooting, and even after knowing about it, posted that tweet anyway. And when Governor Abbott finally did address the shooting, his response was somehow even worse than the dog picture. Even in the wake of a horrible tragedy, Abbott couldn't help but take the opportunity to demonize Texas's immigrant community, writing in part, quote, "I've announced a $50,000 reward for info on the criminal who killed 5 illegal immigrants Friday." First of all, let's be clear, that is not true. We have learned at least one of the victims was a legal resident of the United States. But honestly, that is irrelevant, as the sheriff representing Cleveland, Texas, made it plain. Listen.
My heart is with this 8-year-old little boy. I don't care if he was here legally. I don't care if he was here illegally. He was in my county. 5 people died in my county, and that is where my heart is.
It didn't matter to him, but it certainly mattered to Governor Abbott. His worldview has been poisoned by right-wing xenophobia, and even in the wake of a tragedy like this, he is unable to see the victims for who they are, human beings, and reduce them to simply their immigration status. And this kind of rhetoric is part of a larger pattern from Governor Abbott, who has arguably displayed a sense of indifference towards gun violence in his state, especially when the victims are people of color. Don't forget the night of the shooting in Uvalde, Texas, when a gunman armed with an AR-15 slaughtered 19 children and 2 teachers. What did Greg Abbott do? He flew. He flew to a fundraiser. Abbott then praised law enforcement for their response to the shooting, a response which we now know was entirely negligent because police said they actually didn't go into the school because they were no match for the AR-15 that they would face. Again, it raises this fundamental question. Was Greg Abbott ignorant of the truth, or was he callously lying to the public about what he knew? It's not just Uvalde. In 2019, after an anti-immigrant domestic terrorist massacred 23 people and injured 23 more in a shooting specifically targeting the Latinx community in El Paso, Texas, folks were quick to point out that Abbott's rhetoric about immigrants only added fuel to the fire, including a mailer that went out the day before the shooting telling voters, quote, "If we are going to defend Texas, we'll need to take matters into our own hands." And less than 3 weeks after the deadly anti-immigrant hate crime, he was back at it again, lambasting undocumented immigrants on social media. In the years since the El Paso massacre, Governor Greg Abbott and Texas Republicans have only made it easier to carry guns in Texas, not harder, and they did so with a controversial 2021 law allowing most residents to open carry a handgun without a permit. One Texas sheriff told the New York Times, quote, "It seems like now there's been a tipping point where just everybody is armed." But even amid an epidemic of gun violence in his state, we have no choice but to assume that everybody being armed is exactly what Governor Abbott wants.